Let's show our appreciation before we get started by giving our candidates a really big round of applause. So let's kick off with the first question with Ria and Mahe. From what I'm aware, neither of you have any local government experience. How are you going to pull together a new council while you get up to speed with local government, understand standing orders and how and the rules of running council meetings, form your committee structure, engage with council executives and no doubt a bunch of other government partners? Ria, Mahe, you want to lead off?
Yeah, all silent. I firstly just want to thank you all for coming out. It's fantastic to see you taking an interest in local body politics. It's something we certainly need to do a little bit more of. So to answer the question, for me, I've lived in high performance teams for the last sort of 20 odd years. I know what it takes to pull a team together, and so that is very much the process for me. I'm very focused on that sort of team of 10 approach, where all of us around the council table are contributing to delivering for the voters of Tauranga, and that is, I guess just a quick, how do I do that? That is getting around the candidates. It's meeting them. It's finding out what their priorities are, listening to them, and then trying to find the right people for the right roles. I'm very. I think the most important thing you can do as a leader is listen. And it's very, very important that you have that communication, that honesty, accountability. So I will certainly be trying to establish that expectation of what I see as a high performance team. And then, as you say, there's plenty of other things that you've got to do, but I can get up on that pretty quick.
Just before we go on to Ria, it's quite easy to perform under a team that you've chosen. What about a team where half of them deliberately and publicly disagree with you?
Yeah, that's a good question. Again, I've had to deal with that in the rowing circles. When you're selected in a crew, you don't get to choose the team. And again, what I have learnt is you've got to understand the people, and that is always the most important thing is people. So it's getting alongside them, understanding them, and as a leader, it's about leading from the front, leading by example, and obviously I'm not scared of that hard work that it's going to take to get up to speed.
So Ria, same. I'm pronouncing your name. Yes. Ria, same question, but plenty of competent people have gone into the mayoral role first time, but they have come under a lot of pressure with learning the local government sectors because they haven't been in there before. Capable people, thinking kind of Wellington Mayor type situation, it's a pressure environment. How will you put some personal safeguards and give yourself some personal support to make sure you can do the job?
Yeah, kia ora, Matt. Tuatahi ake kamihi atu au ki taku rangatira ki a tāmati mana whenua o tēnei takiwā o tātou o te moana o Tauranga. Mihi atu ana ki a koe, o tira tātou katoa. Thank you very much for coming out. It's wonderful to see you guys all here. Just to touch on something that you'll hear me bang on about quite often is around the establishment of good collegial relationships. My background currently is in the communications sector. I'm the Chief Communications Officer for Mangatawa Pāpāmoa Blocks Incorporation, and I was integral in developing strategy for the organisation as well. So in the deployment of strategy to bring people together, I feel like outside of getting to know the team, I think it's really fundamental to get to know them and their whānau. Bringing people together at a deeper level to understand the optics and the way that people think and work. From that standpoint, you're then able to kind of navigate your way safely around the council table. And while I don't have a background in local government, it certainly was it is a thing that I'm really interested in, obviously for putting my hat in the ring, but I also studied quite extensively through my political science degree. So I already have, I believe, without having stepped foot in the chamber, a front foot in terms of what's expected, what goes on there. I'm not shy of getting across local government acts and so forth and so on. So again, it's about building relationships that are enduring. I believe relationships are fundamental to any forward movement, fundamental to any progress, no matter what side of the spectrum you sit on, no matter your partisanship style. It's first and foremost incredibly important to be able to read the room, which I can do very well with my background in performance and singing over the last 2 decades, but also being able to move the people around the table because you understand them.
What personal support have you got in place to be able to manage this hotbed of things that are coming at you?
Yeah, well, from a Te Ao Māori perspective, I would definitely bring that lens into the table because I think it's actually really, really valuable. Really valuable. And so having safeguards, I mean, we started our event this evening with Uncle Tamati opening us up with prayer. And so being able to go back to those kinds of structures, those kinds of tikanga-led approaches to safeguard one's spirit, because you, as I'm sure you guys are all aware, more than I, you need to be in check with your own self to move forward. So it'll be those whānau safeguards, those spiritual safeguards, but also having other competent people to lean in on who are experienced in this field, because as I said, this is my first time throwing hat in the ring.
Tina, there's a question here from the audience. How will you manage the balance between collaborative leadership with councillors and getting stuff done, making decisions, making progress?
That's an interesting question. So balancing the collaborative relationship with councillors with actually getting work done.
Yeah. Making decisions and making progress.
Yeah, I think one of the things is creating effective team culture at the very beginning, and that's going to be around resourcing. So I'm not sure what people are aware of, but often within council, you are given a phone and a laptop and told to go do your job, and that is just simply not enough support for a team. So I think one of the things that I would do excuse me, is once we've got that team culture established, is have that team resourced with a budget to ensure that they're getting the support that they need to make good decisions while working on the culture.
Okay. Why don't we move on, Greg? Greg, let's move on to selecting a deputy mayor and the chairs of your new committee structure. So your new committee structure is accepted and ratified by the new council. How are you going to get this done?
Well, I think the first thing you do when you're elected as a mayor is that you get everybody in one by one to talk together, and once you've done that and found out their aspirations, interests and skills, you get the whole group together and see if you can come to that decision in a consensus, because in the end, if you can't get the support of the council as a whole, you're not going to be able to appoint those chairs or committee leads anyway. So I think that's the first thing to do. And the next thing is to make sure that there is training available for people, especially if they haven't been a chair before. I think it's essential, because the first few times you run a committee meeting sets the tone for what's going to happen for the rest of the council triennium, or quadrennium, as it is in this case.
So just while you're still on there, what is the role of the deputy mayor? It's largely assistant ribbon cutter, isn't it?
It's a little bit more than that. Sometimes the mayors get so busy with different things that if you can't attend something, then the people would still like to have a mayor there, so the deputy goes and does that. But in my case, the deputy mayor and I talked a lot about different things, different strategies, even if we disagreed, because I think that's a key thing on council, is learning to disagree without being disagreeable.
So what characteristics would you look for in a deputy mayor?
I think someone who is prepared to speak out and not just toe the line that I want. I want to be challenged by my deputy mayor, and someone who's available. If you can't be available either as a mayor or a deputy mayor, then shouldn't be doing the job. Yeah.
Great. Perhaps Mahe, will you appoint just friendly councillors to committee chairs, or will you appoint the most capable?
Definitely the most capable. I believe in appointing the right people to the roles, and that is the person that can do the job most effectively. One of those things is getting the right people in the right positions is very important to be able to actually deliver, and that is one of the big things for me is actually delivering. And we've seen plenty of councils in the past where there's dysfunction, there's underinvestment in infrastructure, and we've got to get out there and get stuff done. So absolutely, I believe in that robust. Different opinions, different views, and for us as mayor and as councillors, our job is not to have an opinion. Our job is not to get personal. Our job is to deliver for the ratepayers, and we have to listen to your views. We have to listen to the information and make a good decision that is going to benefit the city the most. So yeah, absolutely the best people for the job.
I've got a question for Rhea soon, but just back to Tina, because you're probably the most relevant. There's a question here. Have you read the 2020 Review Observer Report? What lessons have you taken away and will you implement as mayor?
I'm getting all the curly ones. I think it's really important that we work on getting that culture right in the team. I think that was the biggest thing. And that starts right at the beginning, getting people in the room right at the beginning and building that culture together of functioning. I think working, just even as Mahe has said, to working on finding the right people for the right roles, not on those that just agree with you, but actually finding the ones who can do the best roles together. I think it's really about creating a culture and resourcing that culture.
Great. Rhea, how quickly will you form your committee structure and appoint essentially what is kind of the leadership team for the council?
Yeah, great question. I think that's, again, the relationship building needs to occur off the bat, and then the committees need to be formed pretty much as soon as we're able to. Once all the briefing has been done, once we, I suppose, have got a week or some skin in the game, so to speak, then we start forming our committees and we get the proverbial ball rolling to get our city progressing forward.
Great. Greg, so this is a question for each of you. The next council will have a total of 10 members. If there are split votes on resolutions, 5 for, 5 against, how will you as mayor exercise your casting vote? Will you play it conservatively, or will you charge ahead and give yourself 2 votes?
It depends whether the council allows that, because there's a big misunderstanding out there that the mayor automatically gets a casting vote. This is not the case, and when you first set up the committee structure, there's a vote on whether you give the mayor a casting vote. I don't know what happens if that's 5-all, but I prefer not to use my casting vote if I can, so I would tend to exercise it conservatively, because it means you haven't got the support of the people or the people around the table. So I try to avoid casting votes whenever possible.
Mate?
Yeah, it's a good question. I think, for me, it really comes down to, what is the best decision. If I think that is clear, I would use a casting vote. If it was a split decision, then I think maybe we need to go and debate the issues further so we can come to a conclusion.
We get the agendas a few days ahead, and we've usually got a pretty good idea of what's coming up. So I think my way forward would be to ensure we don't get into a situation where we are split, that we have the opportunity to understand what's going on, to maybe re-look at the item on the agenda and form it in a way that it actually is finding more consensus around the team before we go to a vote.
Yeah, much like Tina, I'm about collegiality and consensus building. But then again, like Mahe, when the line needs to be towed and you've got to play your hand, then I think it's within the remit of the mayor to play its hand, much to a utilitarian approach where it's for the greater good.
Great. Look, let's move on to growth. We've got a few topics to cover. Local water done well. So this is one of your very first council decisions you will need to make. You're required by the end of September to tell the Minister of Local Government whether your council will submit an individual plan to deliver water services or a joint plan with other councils. Now, I'll be very surprised if many mayoral candidates don't want to deliver water services with Western Bay, but who would go further afield to propose a plan with water services with councils more further afield? Yeah,
absolutely. I think both Western Bay and TCC don't have the full capacity or the setup to deliver it on our own. So I'd be really interested in a brokering opportunity outside of those particular councils. And we can structure the model as, it could be a shareholding model, but I think we would be remiss to not take on the opportunity to keep affordability and the burden of the ratepayer at bay. So I'd definitely be looking towards that model.
Would that include subsidies to other regions? Like how would you safeguard Tauranga subsidising labour?
Yeah, again, it'll still be about keeping things local. So the focus would be about maintaining water here, keeping it local. But I think, again, it's remiss to not explore the opportunity. We have to explore every single opportunity that we have in our hands.
Yep.
Okay, well, the first disagreement of the night, I wouldn't go further afield than the Bay of Plenty because that's our natural watershed and already we cooperate well with Bay of Plenty. We take their sewerage from a Mokoroa and that's a sort of a quid pro quo as they supply us water from their area. So I think it's just a natural extension to do water as well. But I want to remind people that water is one of the things that this council has done extremely well and 20 or so years ago invested heavily in microfiltration. We were pioneers in the country. Some people said, oh, you know, it being risky, but it was an absolutely brilliant system. We've put the money in there. Of course, we should work closely with our neighbour, but I believe going further afield will just lead to increased bureaucracy with no real savings. Thanks.
Well, do you have something new or... Tina, do you have...
It was more just, look, it was similar to Greg, but Hamilton would be our closest larger neighbour, but they actually don't have waters set up in the way we do. So Tauranga is actually leading in the water space. So I think it would be more likely that potentially some other places would be courting us for working with us.
And before you hand your microphone over, would you agree to a separate entity to give the council balance sheet some headroom?
I would. With the CCO, I would like to retain ownership. I think it's really important that the ownership of our waters assets remains local and the decision making is close. But I do think a CCO provides the opportunity to borrow off balance sheet, which is one of the major constraints we have right now. It's about $570 million that it would take off our 1.2 billion debt.
Mahe?
Yeah, I think firstly, you know, we do have good water systems in the city, so that's important to take into account because we have to make sure that others are adding to it. But, you know, what I would be looking for is absolutely working with Western Bay. Would I go further afield? Well, yes, if it made sense. But, you know, I'd obviously judge that at the time. You know, we need a strong, efficient business. We need to keep the stewardship of our assets. And, you know, we need to see, you know, when it makes sense, does it offer value for money and economies of scale. So, you know, those are the sort of issues and kind of decisions that I'd look at if we went any further afield. But, yeah, I think it certainly makes a lot of sense to share that with Western Bay.
Let's get on to housing. Under the status quo rollout, by 2030, Tauranga will be 4,000 dwellings short of what's needed. That was the Commissioner's writing report to the Minister a few years ago. So while the property market is quiet now, our population is growing and we'll likely have another property boom in the next couple of years when interest rates come down. So what are you going to do to boost housing supply across the city and who will pay for the enabling infrastructure? Ria, do you want to...
Yeah, I think intensification is absolutely key, and we've got opportunities to do that. There is opportunity to unlock greenfield land out of Te Tumu, but again, that's a different conversation. But it comes back down to relationships once again. I'm going to bang on about relationships and how fundamental they are to progressing our city forward until the cows come home, because I really believe that that is the case, and that is essentially the reason why we haven't been able to get the council into the space that it deserves to be for the city that we deserve to live in. So, yeah, I believe fundamentally that will provide so much opportunity, intensification of the city centre through housing, intensification in the other spaces as acknowledged in the LTP. I also want to make mention of Mount Maunganui North. I support the independent hearing panel and what they've come through with. So it's a fine balance. It's about understanding the communities as well and their desires, but in terms of housing, it's a no-brainer.
Well, you've got the microphone, Mahe. Did you want to...
Yeah, so, you know, for me, I think in this space is really important that we deliver a multifaceted approach. We can't do it through opening new land by itself. We can't do it through just sort of medium density housing. It's got to be a multifaceted approach. So, we need to look at an overall plan. What do we want to see our city in 30, 50 years' time, and where are the places that make sense? And that is making sense in the infrastructure we have, in the transport systems we have, in building these communities where people can live, work and play in one place, because that solves a lot of our issues. For me, intensification in the city centre is vital. It's going to revitalise that CBD, having people living, working and playing here. And on the question, growth should pay for growth, absolutely. And that again, we've got to be very careful. We've got the highest housing cost in the country when you look at our income to house price. And so if we load all of it in development contributions, we're just going to drive that house price up. So, we've got to look at ways we can do that. That might be through, for example, the development contributions cover half, and, we have a targeted rate that goes over the next 30 years to pay for the other half, because what that does is it delivers the people that are living there and using that growth pays for the asset. And, that's something I very much believe in with our debtors as well.
Okay. Nice segue, Greg.
Yes, well, first of all, we can't solve the housing problem on our own. We do need government help. And it's actually up to government to start building some social housing here as well. If we can demonstrate to government that we are putting our major emphasis of our long-term plan onto providing housing infrastructure, which doesn't only include pipes and water, but doesn't extend out to transport, then I think government will have to step on board and assist with that.
So elaborate a little bit more. What are you talking about there in terms of culling out matters that you're excluding?
Okay.
Obviously prioritisation.
Yes, so for my belief, the prioritisation should be on roading and transport, and I feel we're slightly out of sync, well actually a lot out of balance with what we're putting into the CBD. There are a lot of other areas feel that they're getting nothing, and that's true. And a lot of people feel that, and we know from surveys, the number one priority for our residents is roading and transport, not only for themselves, but it will help open up other areas or indeed intensify existing areas. Now, why I didn't support what's happened over at Mount Maunganui, it's not because I don't support intensification at all. It's because the Commission appointed an independent panel to make the decision. When they made a decision they didn't like, they overturned it.
We'll get to Mount Maunganui soon. But you've had some comments about developers. Do you want to clarify what you mean? Apparently they've had it too good and too much has been on ratepayers. Do you want to clarify?
Yes, I believe so. When you look at the amount collected from development fees versus the actual costs, we're always behind the eight ball, and often by a few $100 million. I don't have the exact figures here with me. The other thing is that we're a bit of an outlier in that we collect the development contributions and subdivision impact fees, that's what the developer pays, and then people get hit with another fee that they're probably not expecting called a building development fee, impact development fee. So maybe it's time to amalgamate those together, though I do take Mahe's point that if you do that, that is quite a big hit up front for people, but at least they know where they're going.
Greg, I'll just ask you a question. So you talk about development contributions. You were the mayor for 3 years. If it's so unfair, why did you not do anything about it?
Because we're often actually threatened and told by our staff that there would be legal action if we got our development impact fees wrong. So, with the cooperation of developers, then that's something that we can do. Yeah.
Okay. So Ria, just quickly. So, do you know much about the Infrastructure Finance and Funding and Financing Act and how that levy's been applied across the city? Is that something that you're supportive of?
Not in absolute detail, but what I am supportive of again around that specific talking point with infrastructure is brokering the good relationship with central government. We are in a position now here in Tauranga where all eyes of central government are on us. They're on us. They're looking at us because there's opportunity here, and the role that I'm speaking to in terms of its advocacy is we need to be working the room with the government to ensure that we broker the best city deal that we possibly can, because the opportunity is now, and if we don't take that, then we're going to be shafted to the side as we have over consecutive years. So I'm really interested in continuing and starting that brokering of that relationship.
Tina, a few council candidates are saying the IFF levies Gonberger when they get in. Under your council, what's your opinion?
I think we need to use every tool available to us, and IFF is actually, it's not a silver bullet, but it actually is quite a good tool. It has low interest rates that are repayable up to 50 years with increasing repayments, which means as time goes on and growth comes to the city, the burden of paying for that shifts on to those that benefit most from it, which makes it a lighter load on the current ratepayers. So I think we need to use every tool available, and it's a good tool. I think Tauranga was the first city in the country to use that one.
Is it staying under your watch, Greg?
Well, there's no choice because that's been signed up to, and it is an alternative way of financing, but it's not an alternative way of funding. So basically, if I give you an example, council consulted on whether we paid for our share of the downtown with a rates increase or IFF funding. And you know what everybody put in? They said, we don't want to pay for our rates, we'll have IFF funding. The reality is the interest payable on IFF funding is greater than what council can borrow at. And the other reality is that on your rates bill from next year, you'll have your rates bill and you'll also have another bill, IFF repayments. So it's the same thing under a different guise. It's smoke and mirrors and allows council to borrow even more, and in my view, it's not financially prudent.
Except it does have the benefit of shifting some of those repayments into the future, which means we're not paying the full amount right now. It actually does benefit the growth.
Surely if, I think Mahe, you've been talking about an affordable city, surely unleashing more housing supply, people are more concerned with their mortgage payments than their rates bill. Surely if we're addressing the housing supply issue, bring more housing onto the market, that'll start to ease the affordability issue, or at least stop the massive increase.
Oh, absolutely, and supply is the solution to affordability. So we've got to work with anyone that's going to build these houses. And again, what I'm hearing is, it is very hard because when you go and lodge a consent at council, the initial reaction is no, and you have to convince them. So, what do we need? Houses. How do we help these people build us houses so we can increase that supply? So, that's very much where I'm coming from. We've got to work together collaboratively to deliver more houses, and how can we make that easier so we have more houses and they become more affordable. Just quickly on the debt. IFF, whether it's on our balance sheet, it's all debt. So, it doesn't really matter where it comes from. Where is the best value for money? We've got to account for all that debt together because that is important. But as I said before, the thing that debt does is it shifts the cost of the asset over time, so the people that use it pay for it. And that's what we've just got to be aware of with debt.
Am I allowed to point out that it's not a question of debt, it's how that debt is split between IFF and rates debt. And of course it is cheaper to borrow through the council borrowing scheme than it is to get money from the IFF. So to me, it's a no-brainer. Why pretend with this IFF business?
Except that we only have 280%. So we're at our headroom now, we have no capacity to borrow, so it allows us to actually keep progress moving forward at the same time.
So on that point, there's potentially a city and regional deal in the city deal in the pipeline with government. Do you have any red lines around where you would walk away from an agreement if they ask for too much contributions locally?
I'll answer that. For me, it's about value for money. So, if it's not delivering us value for money, why are we going to take it? But I think it is a fantastic thing. And one of the keys to me is not just doing a deal with with the national government, we've got to go down there bipartisan and agree with the Labor government as well, because what could happen is if the government changes and we think we've got 10 years of of funding, and then the government changes and they take that away. The thing that a city deal does is it gives us certainty for the next 10 odd years, and that is really key again for getting the city developed and built, because we need to know what we've got, and this is the problem we have is there's all these plans, there's all these feasibility studies done, and then when we go to government and ask them to chip in their share, they say let's shift that down the road, like Hewlett's Road and Tauranga Street, really key issues that we have no control over. So, I think a city deal would be good.
Is there any different answers?
I think it would be good as well, but once again, we've got to demonstrate that we're prepared to do our bit. Now, we've got nothing in our long-term plan for the key infrastructure required around Tauranga Street. So why would the government put money into the Hewlett's Road, their share of it, when we have nothing in the long-term plan for that? So, we do need to put the money up to do that, and that's why we need to prioritise our long-term plan accordingly.
I'd quite like to broaden the conversation beyond just infrastructure to everything that the government does in our city. So whether that's building schools or building roads, we all know from experience they don't always show up where they need to be, and they don't function well when they're finished because City Council doesn't actually get to be a part of those conversations in the planning. So that's something that I would like to bring into those conversations as well. And with a constrained balance sheet, we're always looking at ways of getting revenue. So part of those conversations around city deals, I'd like to actually bring in some things around the fact that the government on developed land pays no rates in our city. And I know they don't have a lot of spare money right now, but I think they should be paying their way. So I think paying development contributions on their own buildings in our city and paying rates would be a very good place to start.
You're fine. Look, let's move on to transport. We know local government's broken. The sector's championed for a number of matters, but we need to move on. In terms of transport, it is the council's most expensive activity, and council's contribution is largely funded by rates. In order to ease the pressure off rates, do you support funding transport by a user pays model such as road user charges or peak time tolling? Anyone? I feel like I'm going to Rhea too often first, so it's a bit unfair.
Someone else can go.
Yep. Greg, I'll take it.
Okay. Well, I think we're the proud owners of two toll roads in the country are in our area, and I think that people would be only prepared to consider alternative methods if we're not the guinea pig, and that we are treated fairly alongside the rest of the country. So I would be very loath to go for anything like peak time pricing until I know what other money is going to come off to compensate for that. The other reason is that it's going to affect probably people that are not earning that much money more. The rest of us perhaps, or people who are retired, they can change their travel times, but I don't think many people in terms of school or trade people or whatever can avoid those peaks of the cost.
So keep it on the rates.
So on the rates.
So keep it funding by you need to fund it somehow by rates is what you're saying.
No, we actually have other charges, road user charges and taxes on petrol. It's about time, yes, and it's about time we got more of that. Now we've always.
7 other councils are asking for that.
Well, that's fine. We have the Port of Tauranga, and so therefore we deserve more money to cope with the traffic to and from that, and to improve the rail links to and from that. It's time for Tauranga to get its fair share, and I don't believe it has. We've had nothing but dithering and delay over our state highways. At last it's happening, but it is time for government to show that it values the Port of Tauranga and the people that have it here.
Tina. Rhea, sorry, you want to go?
No, look, fundamentally, I completely agree with Greg. I mean, it's time that Tauranga is seen for the value system that it brings the entire nation. And so, nā tautoko i a koe, Greg. I think that's fundamental to moving our city forward is, exactly what Greg was saying. But in the
meantime, you'll keep it funding through rates, or you will look to explore...
I think so. I'm not interested in the congestion charges. I know that didn't take to water too well, so I'm not interested in going down that route. For the now, I think we play it safe until we're in a different position.
Tina, Mahe?
You go.
Yeah, I think congestion charges, I'm not opposed to them in principle, but I think it's at least 20 years too early for Tauranga. I don't think you can charge people for moving around the city when we don't provide them other choices. So we need to get our transport network sorted out, our public transport network. We need to provide other options for people to be able to get around before we go imposing any charges on them. Just on some quick wins, as far as solutions, because transport is a gnarly one, but we all know what it's like trying to drive around Tauranga in the school holidays. We don't have much of a congestion problem. So one of the first things that I would do is actually get all the principals in the room and look at how do we solve this so that we can get more out of our network while we're solving the infrastructure challenges.
So while you've got the microphone, Tina, you worked on the Carless Wednesday challenge.
Yes.
How much are you going to push people into walking, cycling and modal shift?
I'm not interested in pushing people into anything, but what I am is very interested in providing choice so that people can make the choices they want to make, but not pushing people into anything.
Yeah, just quickly on that, I think, to give people efficient, effective and reliable public transport options is great. But my solution, rather than rates, and this is actually something I think we should do from a national perspective, because that's the only way it's going to work. No petrol tax, cut it. GPS is in the car. You get charged road user charges, and then so every kilometre you do, you pay, and that goes to where what roads you use. It's going to be a great solution for Tauranga because we get a lot of people here that want to use our roads, and when they use our roads, they pay to use our roads. And the other thing with that is then you can go to we talk about congestion charging, but variable charging. So when things are congested, you can charge people more, to go in peak times, for example, or, in holidays when we've got a lot of people on the roads. That's the way that you will change people's behaviour if it's a better option.
I don't think that's going to happen at all. It's not a deterrent because people still fundamentally need to move around the city. So charging them at that kind of rate isn't going to not keep people off the roads.
Well, they can make a choice as to when they go, but you're going to be saving your money on petrol tax and just paying it in a different way.
Okay. There's a new industrial rates, a new industrial targeted rate. A big part of that, but big part of the logic, that's over and above the commercial rate on businesses. Big part of that logic is these big bulk businesses, they've got a lot more transport pressure on the roading network. Is it going to stay under your leadership? Ria, you've got the microphone.
Yes, I'm very supportive of the industry increase in terms of the rates. It's at an increase of 32.4%. And in fact, I think it should increase more. And I'm speaking specifically around the build-up of industry around our airshed. I know that there's a question that's speaking to the airshed, but I think human potential and human health is much more important than putting our people at risk. So I think that heavy industry, should definitely pay for what they're emitting and putting out into our city and across the city.
Tina, briefly before Greg.
I think it would be good to see how it lands on the businesses over the year. I think one of the things I'd like to do is engage with our business sector. So listening to the industrial sector and what impact it actually has on them, because it's to provide infrastructure mostly around transport. So I think that would be a key for me.
Great.
Yes, it would stay, and particularly in relation to Totara Street, which we don't get state highway funding for because it's not a state highway. So we need to recoup the costs of the wear and tear on that road, and that's a reasonable way of doing it. Now, I realise it comes from all industrial areas and not just around there, but that's part of the principle. Fortunately, the Regional Council does have a big chunk of land at Mayoral, which they're developing. So I'm hoping that some of the heavy industries that cause distress for people at the Mount are able to shift out there and that those areas become more commercial areas. But you've also got to remember, even pinging commercial businesses for increased rates, and I agree that they do need to pay that differential, many of those businesses are hurting at the moment. Particularly businesses along Cameron Road, down at Cherrywood, a number of places, and to keep on hiking that up, I think is a problem at the moment.
Yeah, I think we've just got to get in behind business and figure out what that impact is. But yes, I do support a differential, but we've just got to try to get in and make sure that that's not going to drive business out, because we need a strong economy. We need to support businesses because that provides jobs and keeps Tauranga growing. So that's important. You just referred to Totara Street there, Greg. Well, again, if we have those road user charges, the people that use Totara Street pay to use Totara Street, and that comes back to us locally, not to the national level. So very much support that idea.
Okay, yeah, no, there's lots of questions coming in, but may I just say that NZ, New Zealand Transport Agency, they do fund the probably council's biggest non-rates revenue in terms of funding up to 50% of transport projects and maintenance, as long as it aligns with their policies. The government of the day changes, as we see. Are you brave enough to stick with a long-term transport plan, or are you going to chase the money? If next government comes in, they want to fundamentally change the transport strategy and essentially have Wellington lead our transport strategy because they have the purse strings in terms of that big funding.
You mean about the direction that is being set from
they
government?
will only fund certain projects that align with their policies.
That was part of the challenge, I think, with Cameron Road Stage 1 and Stage 2, is we had a government shift in the middle, which changes the priorities. So previously it was around multimodal, providing lots of choice, and now it's more around just providing the roading. Remind me of the question again, Matt.
No. Well, it's just whether if government says we're not going to fund this project, will you go ahead, knowing that it's really important to the strategy? Just because different governments come in with saying they want to focus, say if Julian Genta, Minister, becomes Transport Minister again and says we're just going to focus on walking, bikes and buses, would you chase the money?
It's a fine balance. I think when we've got a project half done, I think finishing the projects are really important because we need connectivity. We have a lot of things that are not connected around the city. But I also would like to look at more solutions around things like PPPs, like looking at private-public partnerships, looking at other ways of actually achieving the same thing and not being quite so bound by that 3-yearly change.
If I can just say that with regard to, for example, Cameron Road, Stage 1 and 2, the original total project budget was 85 million, now it's over 300 million, and we're getting an indication, perhaps, that government won't kick in with any more subsidy. They subsidise part of the first tranche. The question is, how can we find a couple of $100 million to do that when we've spent the money elsewhere? And so once again, I think it's about showing the government that we're serious about transport and that infrastructure and putting our priority there and saying, now we've done that, you need to follow on.
I think, for me, it's getting alongside central government and working together. I think the city deals will give us a lot more certainty that we're not flip-flopping between different priorities, because we do need certainty going forward. Just a good example on that Cameron Road. Look, we've got to start getting value for money. And, we can't keep delivering projects that we think is going to be X and it costs, 3 times as much. So, if projects can't be delivered on budget or on time, it's probably going to get cut. That's just the reality, and find a way to do it on budget. It's just not acceptable.
Okay, let's move into the next question around building communities. So each ward has their own issues, but let's use the example of Mount Wanganui on how your council will rebuild communities under your leadership. So the Mount recently pushed back against paid parking, building heights, air discharges, road closures for events, and that proposal for one-way roading around Pilot Bay. So how are you going to support this community with its competing uses and come together under your leadership?
Yeah, well, my preference with the parking is to get equity around parking, because we don't have that here in Tauranga and over at the Mount.
Let's not focus on single issues, let's focus on building the community.
Yeah, so people want parking, right? People want to be able to park and they can't, and that comes along a lot. People are saying, well, I can't park anywhere, so we need to provide the impetus for people to park and make it free across the board. So I'd be supporting that, to build that community so that they can park their cars. But of course, we also want to get the cars off the road too, so I'm interested in how we might better use our harbour space. Anyway, that's another conversation. But obviously intensification as well for the houses, for our houses, our housing market, we need to intensify. That's a no-brainer. And Yeah, those are. What was the rest of your question, Matt?
Well, it's more, how are you going to bring this community together with different competing interests?
Yeah, again, it's about relationship building. It's about being able to have a shared vision and everyone buying into the shared vision with good leadership. That's what good leadership does. It brings people in, it brings families in, it brings kaumātua in, it brings their tamariki in. And that's what the role of the mayor and the mayor's councillors and the city's councillors fundamentally set to do, to bring communities together, to build cohesion, community and connection. And I fundamentally believe that that's how we'll get the city moving.
Tina?
I think our communities are saying loud and clear that they're trying to speak and we're not listening. So one of the things that I'd really like to do is work on more localism around engagement. I've got a strategy to engage our communities differently so we can front foot some of these things and not end up with the plans getting to the stage, say like Plan Change 33, getting to the stage that it is, and then all of a sudden we've got big pushback in the community. I think if we gave more decision-making ability to our communities, we would be able to create a lot more streamlined decision-making that actually benefits our communities more effectively as well.
Mahe?
I think we're losing our community over throughout New Zealand, and this is something that's very, very important to me. So we've got to start building those communities back, and what I believe in is working alongside the community to deliver for them, and who knows, let's use the Mount better than the people that live, work and play at the Mount. So let's sit down with them, let's find out the issues, let's find out their solutions, and then let's make a plan off that, because this is what we've got to do. We've got to develop processes that we can work together to deliver for the community, and I think this is key. And like, I just want to mention something like the skate park we've just had at the Mount. What a fantastic facility, and that is something that the community wanted. And look at all hours the kids out there playing. They're not on screens. Fantastic.
I think the problem is the community don't feel listened to. If we're going to take Mount Maunganui as an example, and consultation thing was probably done very poorly and it wasn't explained well. So when the community, for example, see high rises and overshadowing in a climate that is not the Gold Coast, then they say, well, we really don't want that. And when they submit 400 to 5 against that high rise along the CBD, you imagine 6 stories alongside both sides of that Mount Maunganui Road in the CBD. It would be a horrible place, especially in winter. So they see that, so they don't want it. They see the one-way trial in Tauranga City and they don't think much of that, so they don't want it there. They see things happening in other parts of the city that they don't want, and I can't blame them.
I need to move on. I'm going to broaden this topic in terms of there seems to be there's a distrust in the establishment is one question, and another question around how are you going to restore democracy so that people feel like they're being heard. So I'm going to merge these two questions together in terms of, seems like politics at the moment, on both sides of the political spectrum, they're going to the extremes. It could be quite a tough political environment and you're not sure which candidates you're going to get. How are you going to sort of work in this environment? Tina?
I think the first one, it kind of comes back to our very first question, is around building that team culture right at the beginning. I mean, the reality is we're not all going to be on the same page, but we are on the same team. And I think that there is a way to actually forge those relationships to create a high-functioning council within a tense political environment. And I think it's just in the way that you actually work together.
Communication is key to building any good relationships, and my background and being able to communicate with people that wouldn't normally engage, I mean, this is a prime opportunity to take. So making sure our communities are at the forefront of every single thing that we do in council, engaging with communities as often as possible, actually more often than possible, to ensure that the communities come along board, because we want it to be a train that moves together as one. We don't want to be siloing ourselves off, so I'm really for clear, concise communication.
We might move on, just because we're we've only got 10 minutes left. Let's move into the city centre. So, Greg, you've said a couple of things about the city centre. Is there anything that you will, particularly for those landlords or tenants in the city centre? You've said what you won't support. What will you support? What will you champion for in the city centre?
A reasonable expenditure in relation to the rest of the city, because Tauranga now is not just one city centre, it's several centres, and being out and about, what I've noticed is that people feel that they're being shortchanged with all the money being spent here. Now, what we don't know is what has been committed to, so I can't promise to change or do anything or stop doing anything, because I suspect the contracts have been signed and I suspect the long-term plan has been largely entrenched. But what I'm hoping is to have an amendment of that plan and actually hear from people where their priorities are. I'm also in favour of doing one project and getting it right before signing up to the next. And that's where I think the current regime had a huge chance to show that they could get Cameron Road right. It didn't happen, and now people are reluctant to see stage 2 happen. And I would like to see what has happened with the contracts and what is set in concrete, and then at the same time ask the people what they really want and what they're prepared to pay for.
I just need to move to Mahe because I haven't got you to speak in a while. So what messages do you have to the private investors who have or will be investing in the CBD under your mayor?
Look, I think we're seeing the CBD getting revitalised. I really want a vibrant CBD and making it a destination, somewhere that people want to go. That should give the people that are going to build, that housing and stuff, some confidence that the city is going ahead. It's going to be a great place to live, and they should get on and help with our housing crisis.
Okay. Tina, well, Te Manawa Taki
Te Manawa Taki o Te Papa.
That's the one. Will the Civic Precinct proceed if you're mayor?
Yes. I think that we need to revitalise our CBD. I think a lot of the communities around have actually had a lot of investment. Our CBD has not had a lot of investment in a long time. There is a lot of private investment going on, and I think that needs to be supported. And Tauranga is growing up as a city. So we're not a little village anymore, and I think it's really important that we continue to grow up and become it's a financial district, a business district. The malls, with all the free parking, they have all fantastic chain stores. I think our CBD is going to be a little bit different, and it's important that we continue it, but I will caveat that with not at the expense of affordability. I think we do need to have a look at these projects. I want to keep it going, but I do think we need to ensure it is affordable.
Ria, is the CBD important, and do you support TCC's current plans?
It's absolutely important. Just thinking back when I was a child walking up Devonport Road and how vibrant it was some 20-something years ago, but now that's not the case, and that's a sad state of affairs, because we want this place to be the place that we all come to work, play, live, and enjoy. So the CBD definitely deserves some love, and I'm glad that it's getting some at the moment, and I support the sentiments of Tina in terms of Te Manawa Taki o Te Papa. I think it's a really great opportunity to start seeing some life, and we're starting to see, like Mahe has said earlier, some life come back to the city, so I reckon it's absolutely important, as well as intensification. There's lots of opportunity there for intensification, because that will bring back scales of economy, it'll bring people back to the city centre, and it'll create that livelihood that we've all been yearning for and just not feeling so good about every time we walk up Devonport Road, so completely supportive of that.
I've got a few other questions on the radar. So the Minister of Local Government addressed a chamber meeting in March in response to a question about avoiding going back to the situation that required commissioners in the first place. He said, look, we're going back to democracy, but his government is keen to support the new council. What support would you ask from the Minister in supporting the new council, given that it's quite a hard stop back into democracy? Usually there's a bit of a managed retreat.
I think a couple of things. The first is we need, as Tina sort of said, we need that support that we have the capability to do what we need to do. But, the most important thing for me from central government is helping us, funding-wise. And what we've seen, if you read that the Independent Observer's report from 2020, the issues that were brought up there, we've underinvested for many years in infrastructure. The can's been kicked down the road, and now we're down the road. Are we going to kick it down the road again, or are we going to build it? Because unfortunately, had we built it 8 years ago, it would have been a hell of a lot cheaper than it is now, and it's all coming home to roost. But so I think that's what we need from them. We need some certainty and some funding to get us on. But as I said before, we've got to start delivering value for money from this council.
I think providing budget would be something that would be very helpful in training opportunities for elected members. So as I implied earlier, you're given a phone and a laptop, and that's your resourcing. So I think there needs to be budget for elected members to be able to get the training that they need to do the best job. And investment in the governance team is an investment in our city. I think that we could resource them with a small staff unit so that there's people who are accountable to the governance team that can help with research and help keeping us strategically focused, because it's very easy to get caught up in the weeds, the day-to-day work that goes on, and we can keep our sights on the strategic decisions that need to be made. I think we can create a much more efficient and effective council.
Yeah, absolutely. Again, harping on, going to bang on about the relationship between Tauranga City Council and central government. It's fundamental. And it's just good to have a good collegial relationship. It doesn't need to be a difficult situation. It can be incredibly collegial, because out of that we'll get more benefit. As Mahe's pointed out, bang for buck. As Tina's pointed out, create good synergies between us. And as Greg has pointed out, it just makes sense. So I'm all for central government coming to the party.
Any different, Greg?
Well, I'm actually not frightened about Tauranga reverting back to the dysfunction of old. I actually have confidence that any of these people here could lead a council that, whilst they disagree, can still unite and make decisions. It's sort of annoyed me that for some reason Tauranga people for the last X number of years have been told that we're not capable of choosing our representatives. I think it was wrong.
Okay, so the new ward structure will mean councillors may know their wards. I'll stay with you, Greg. New ward structure will mean councillors may know their ward, but they'll have a lot to learn for the rest of the city. You are signing signing an oath for governing the whole city. Do you think you're going to get a whole bunch of councillors talking about potholes and playgrounds and walkways as opposed to the big issues?
No, I don't. I think the councillors will. Something's happened here. I can speak up. Can you hear me okay? Yeah. I think that most people will put their differences aside and be able to, still it's on the blink. I think most people can put their differences aside and act in the interests of the city as a whole. And in a way, what happened a few years ago is going to make people more likely to want to perform together as a team. Yeah.
Okay. Anyone got anything different to that?
I think that's where community engagement will come in. I think it'll be really important to have a bit of a strategy where we get around the city so that the ward candidates or the ward councillors actually get to understand some of the pain points and the issues in other suburbs than their own.
Okay, just one, there's a question in here. What is your stance on amalgamation between Western Bay and TCC? Good idea?
It makes sense.
Yep. Quick question. Mahe, makes sense?
Yep.
Yep. Greg?
We start with the water and see how that goes, and then make sure that we can be assured that if there is amalgamation, there are also savings. Because I've heard plenty of talk about amalgamation, and if there are benefits and quantifiable benefits, fine. But too often, we don't see anything come of it.
Okay. I am extremely punctual, and it is dead on 6:20, so I'm going to start with closing statement, so you're free to talk about anything that you want to talk about, but I'll give you three minutes. And timer starts now. I'll give you a 30-second. Sorry, we'll start again, who wants to go first? Mahe? Well, doesn't it?
Can we use the lectern? Is that all right? We can.
If you want to use
We could push you sideways.
Yeah. Come and use the lectern if you want, Mahe, but we'll give you 3 minutes, and I'll give you a 20-second warning. Go.
Okay, thank you. Well, for me, I'm looking forward, and what I can't change is the past, but I can change the future. So that's why I think you should go with me. I have the leadership qualities to deliver for the city. I'm very passionate about this role. And when I'm passionate and I have that vision, I know what I can deliver for the people. I've showed it plenty of times. I want to deliver the best small city in New Zealand. I think this is a great city, but it can be even better. You know, there is some key priorities for me. You know, we've got some great roads, but we have a lot of bottlenecks. You know, that is something that we can sort out quite quickly. We've got to stop looking at plans and you know, feasibility studies and actually just get out there and deliver for the people. You know, I believe in accountability, transparency. You know, they are just words, but this is what I've lived my life in. You know, and that's to you, to myself. You know, we've got to start working as a team to deliver for the city. You know, this is something that hasn't been done. You know, I don't want to get into politics. I want to get into working as a high performance team to deliver for this city, and that is really key. You know, obviously there is a lot of issues, but I'm really excited about what we can achieve. You know, we want to be the can-do city. We want to, you know, have that affordable housing so people want to come and live here. You know, we want to deliver a vibrant CBD so people want to live in the city. You know, we want to help support our businesses. We need to cut the red tape so they can get on and do what they do, and that is provide jobs and opportunities for other people to come here. You know, these are all things that we need to deliver as a city. And, you know, one of the other, you know, great ideas I've been having at the moment is, you know, Christchurch has proved that it can't run Sale GP. You know, why can't we be the city that gets in and gets these events and delivers for this city? And again, like, I'm not going to do anything that doesn't deliver that value for money or make sense financially, because we are in a very, very tight situation. And we need to be prudent with our spending. We need to only spend where it makes sense and what the people of Tauranga want us to deliver. So that is really my vision for the city and what I want to deliver. I am only one of 10 votes. And so it is important that you vote people that can work in a team and can, you know, get out there and let's start doing it. As I said, let's deliver the best small city in New Zealand. Vote Mahe Drysdale #1. Thank you.
I just want to thank you all for being here tonight. It's great that so many people are engaged in these elections because they're really important. So my vision for Tauranga is centred around inclusive leadership that listens, collaborates and delivers tangible results for our community. I bring a diverse background. I've worked in corporate roles, IT, the creative sector, run my own business, worked in contracting and health, real estate in Miami, governance roles and volunteering in our community, advocating for those who are often marginalised or vulnerable. So this is simply just to illustrate that my experience is broad. I work collaboratively across the board to find new and meaningful change with a steady and inclusive hand. I live my values and I work hard. Effective leadership begins with a clear vision, with empathy, with collaboration and decisive action. I'm committed to engaging with our residents, our ratepayers, our businesses, because your voices matter. We may be electing a team of 10, but it will take 161,000 of us together to progress our city where every voice is heard and every person can thrive. So my approach is focused on delivering 4 key priorities of housing supply and affordability, sustainable transport and infrastructure solutions, effective community engagement and harnessing innovation to deliver smarter solutions and drive desperately needed efficiencies in council processes and delivery. So these are commitments to action, and I will work hard to find and implement innovative solutions that address our massive challenges. I have a detailed 100-day action plan with over 40 strategy points to hit the ground running from day one. To achieve these goals, I'll foster, support and resource a highly effective, collaborative and well-functioning yet usually very diverse team, one which prioritises the work over politics and ensures that TCC is kept agile, efficient and high-performing as rightly expected by our community. I believe the way forward is in partnering with local business, tangata whenua, our regional and national partners, and empowering community voices in decision making to find and harness the expertise and innovation that Tauranga has to offer, while searching further afield to learn from those that have done this well before us. So in closing, I ask for your support as business leaders and stakeholders in Tauranga's future. Together, let's build a city where collaboration drives progress, where innovation sparks solutions, where our voices shape the future. So thank you for this opportunity, and I look forward to earning your #1 vote for Mayor.
It's vodka, but I want to be the professor. And I am standing way. So look, good evening everybody. I'm asking for your vote to become Mayor. Tauranga is my principal place of residence, and I've loved it enough to have lived here for many years. I'm out and about and I'm in touch. In the past week I've been at CATS, the musical, the Tauranga Boys and Girls College We Will Rock You production, sports at Ferguson Park, and following this event tonight I'm going to show at the historic village. And I'm not even the Mayor. I've been a patron, participant in and funder of community organisations since 1987. My commitment to Tauranga is unequalled. I believe Tauranga needs a Mayor who can hit the ground running. I don't need some lengthy induction process. I want to reduce the red tape and bureaucracy and not be captured by it. I'm clear on what needs to happen immediately. That is, the long-term plan needs serious revision. The new Mayor and councillors need to make decisions that they own and for which they will be held to account. Currently, it is more of a long-term wish list than a plan in my view. Most of the external funding for the CBD projects hasn't been secured. Roading and transport investment must be made the priority. As I say, Totara Street has been completely omitted. Contrary to the spin, past councils actually have achieved a lot, and I'm going to use the word we. During my time as a councillor, we built Baywave, we built a stadium and sporting complex at Bay Park, we purchased the Kopararua Valley and constructed the roading network there, we purchased farms for reserves, and we introduced a class-leading microfiltration water supply, we even funded an art gallery. During time as Mayor, we completed the Southern Pipeline Harbour Crossing, pressed go on the Waiari Water Project, the new airport terminal, we constructed recreational walking and cycling trails. Despite dithering from government on our state highways and local road funding share, we did make progress. We achieved this through prudent financial management, we had reasonable rates rises, and we had a debt of 500 million. Debt is 1 billion now, projected to treble to 3 billion in 10 years, and combines with rates increases arguably up to 164% over the same period, this isn't sustainable. No wonder the Council's own scientific poll shows a mere 16% of public satisfied with the Council's financial management. Recently I heard Minister of Finance Nicola Willis speaking. She talked a lot about inheriting a huge debt, wrongly prioritised expenditure and burgeoning bureaucracy. I thought she was talking about here. But we have a great future with the right council and the right mix of investment spread over the city. With your support, we can preserve our democracy and progress Tauranga sensibly. Thank you.
Just like to point out that the long-term plan doesn't back up Greg's numbers around the debt tripling. So
That's right. Yeah. Ria.
I think so.
A tutahi ake ka mihi atu hau kia koutou katoa te hunga I piri mai ki tēnei kaupapa a tinana nei a ipurangi nei a hākera nei mihi ni ana kia koutou me tēnei kāhui nei rā te tuahu kia koutou I tū te ringa kia tū motu hake mo tēnei I tēnei kaupapa. You know what? This whole exercise of campaigning, putting hat in the ring, getting to know people like Mahe, like Tina and like Greg and a multiplicity of others has been some of the greatest weeks of my life. I'm born and bred here in Tauranga Moana, Rangatapu School, Tauranga Intermediate, Tauranga Girls College. My eldest child, Te Ramatua, is at Maungatapu School now. My mother went to that school and her siblings, so I'm very much sitting in an intergenerational space, and that's what I stand here for, is the intergenerational transmission of tauranga moana to the generations after us, and thinking ahead in terms of how we preserve that and how we move this place forward. Yes, admittedly, I don't have every single tool in my kete sharpened and at the ready, but what I do have for you is a heart. What I do have for you is humility, and what I do have for you is a desire to lead Tauranga into a space and direction that we've never ever had in the history of Tauranga moana politics. We've never had someone like me at the helm, leading people like you into the future that we all deserve. Now, I fundamentally agree with every single person that have spoken before me in terms of outputs and outcomes and what they want to deliver. Of course, I want to enable housing so that our people, our whānau, can have warm, safe homes, because in safe homes comes connection, it comes cohesion, it comes, they feel like they have a purpose. Of course, I want our people to move around better, so with infrastructure that we deserve, with transport and options at the ready for us, whether that be on the road or on water. Of course, I want to make sure that rates don't spike up, or housing and rates become so unaffordable that we can't put food on our tables. It's a no-brainer. But what I do have, I believe, that makes me fundamentally different is that I have an intergenerational plan for this city. And that's the kind of direction that Tauranga moana needs to move in, because we haven't moved in that space before. So I'm not thinking about the LTP 10 years, I'm thinking 50, 100, 150 years out, when your mokopuna and your great-grandchildren are the proprietors of this land. So vote for Ria Hall, number 1 for Mayor, because she's thinking about further afield than just yourselves. Kia ora tātou.
Thank you for the members for being here and being so supportive. Thank you very much for the University of Waikato. They do lovely business events here and lots of venue space, so they want to integrate with the business community as much as they can. So thank you very much. Candidates, you're free to mingle. We just want to check maybe you might want to talk to you first. That's all. Thank you very much and good night.
Thanks, Matt.
Thank you, Matt.
You've been very fair.
Yeah, it's great.